And I'm Howie Silbiger, the host of the Howie Silbiger Show right here on the True Talk Radio Network. And what a week it's been. In fact, it's been 2 weeks. We didn't do a show last week, so this has been 2 weeks now. And what a 2 weeks it's been. So much has happened in the last 2 weeks that I decided to bring on Sheldon right away, right off the top of the show. I decided to bring on Sheldon. And so you see Sheldon right there on the side of the screen, and he'll be on the show with me throughout the entire show. But before we speak to Sheldon, let me just tell you how this week has gone, just so you understand how crazy of a week this has been. At the beginning of the week, I was called a fascist, racist, homophobe, and that was based on the show I did 2 weeks ago. I don't know where the homophobe came in, but a fascist, racist, based on my continuous objection to the support of the Black Lives Matter organization. Now, of course, I made this very clear, and I keep making it clear, but people keep taking it out of context, as people tend to do. I support Black lives. I mean, who doesn't? I support all lives. I support everybody's life. Everybody's life is precious. Judaism teaches us that life is paramount to anything else. And so because I'm an Orthodox Jew and because I have moral values, I support lives. I support people's lives. I don't believe in oppression. I don't believe in suppression of rights. I don't believe in holding anyone back from doing anything that they could achieve. And I've been like that my whole life. You can look back at anything I've ever written, anything I've ever hosted, anything I've ever said, and you will see consistently. Always had a consistent pattern of thought when it comes to people rights, and my consistent pattern of thought always followed the idea of essentially libertarianism. I do what I do, you do what you do, and I won't judge you for what you do. You don't judge me for what I do. I will only judge you and I will only talk about you if you do evil or if you make the religion look bad. That's the only time I'll talk about you. And in my opinion, doing evil, committing crimes and doing all sorts of weird stuff, and making the religion look bad are on the same plane. That's my opinion. I'm entitled to my opinion. And the reason I'm entitled to my opinion, and I am not forcing my opinion onto you. You have the option to listen to the show or not listen to the show, to watch the show or not watch the show. That is your option. I express my opinion, and I invite you to either call in. We have an open line the entire show, or to write to me, or to post up on Facebook, or on YouTube, or on Instagram, or on Periscope, or wherever else we're being broadcast. There's always a chat box that you could just post into there if you disagree with something I say. So that's the kind of guy I am. So for somebody to call me that over the course of the week didn't bother me. I mean, I've been in this business way too long for things like this to bother me. I didn't lose any sleep over it. I just thought it was silly. I think it's silly when people resort to personal insults instead of arguing the points. I think it's silly when people go to personal insults when they come after you personally, instead of arguing the ideas. I express ideas. I express a political philosophy. I talk about politics, and I express my opinion on politics. But once again, it is solely my opinion. Now, other people have other opinions. Not everybody agrees with my opinion. I know that Sheldon for sure doesn't agree with a lot of the stuff I say. And that's fine, because you're entitled to your opinion. Sheldon's entitled to his opinion. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. And that's what makes this show fun. The fact that I could express my opinion, you could call and express your opinion. Sheldon could express his opinion. When Mark is on, he could express his opinion. And anybody could express any opinion they want on this show. I never shut anybody up. I never tell anybody to get lost. I always listen to everything everybody has to say. I might respond to it, but I listen to it. And at the end of the day, we could walk away from the show still being friends. At the end of the day, we could walk away from the show still respecting each other. At the end of the day, it is just a political opinion. It's not the end of the world if we disagree with each other. We could agree to disagree, because that's the way mature adults behave. That's the way mature people behave. We agree to disagree. We don't break down into name calling fights. We don't break down into spitting wars or into some kind of stupidity of insulting each other. That's not how grown people are supposed to react and supposed to behave. And so when somebody says something nasty like that about me, it doesn't bother me per se. I'm not bothered by it. I don't lose sleep over it. I don't fret about it. I don't go walk around don't going, oh my gosh, he doesn't like me. I don't care if you like me or not. What I do care about is the respect of you giving me the right to have my opinion and me giving you the right to have your opinion. That's called respect. And I live my life by respect. This is how I operate. This is how my life operates. I respect people and I expect the same back from them. Now, people who don't respect me, okay. So they are not as mature as I am. Okay, I could live with that. I could live with the fact that some people are not mature. I can live with it. I can live with it. It's still not right to go and start insulting people. It's just stupid. So if you have something to say to me, and you feel that a point of view that I'm expressing is not consistent with your moral values or consistent with your expressive point of view, that's fine. You have the option to write to me. You could talk to me. We could discuss it. You have the option to turn me off. Just click on that little X on top of the screen. And you'll never have to see me again. You have the option to you have the option to call in, and we could argue about it on the air. So many different options. Name calling isn't one of them. So the next time somebody posts up a name calling thing on Facebook about me, when it refers to me, if you're posting it on my page or on one of these show pages, if you post a name calling thing, I will delete you immediately and ban you from the page. Simple as that. Because if we can't have a rational conversation, there's no point in having a conversation at all. I'm Howie Silbiger. If you want to call in, the number to call, 1-877-669-1292. That's 1-877-669-1292. I'm happy. I'm happy because my friend Sheldon Eric Fried is here, and that makes me happy. Hi, Sheldon. Welcome back.
Hi, Howie. How you doing? How's it going?
I am great, thank God. How are you?
Very, very well. So you had a really interesting week, have you?
Well, it's always interesting. It just gets more and more interesting as the week goes on.
But you know what? I agree with what you're saying. You know what? I know that you and I may not necessarily agree on everything, but one thing we always have for each other, and for the listeners out there, let's not forget, Howie and I have been friends for many, many years, worked at the same radio station, and then, of course, working at True Talk Radio for now about 7 years. That's going to be going on in this
Has it been 7 years already?
Yeah, it was October of 2013.
It's a long time.
That you invited me to come on, and I've been a contributor and producer ever since. So it's been a wild ride. Covered many Just for Laugh shows,
Yeah.
and it's really it's amazing how fast it really goes.
Yeah, seriously, 7 years. Wow.
But I never understand people that, regardless of what people's point of views are, I mean, even if you and I don't agree, and you really hit the nail right on the head, even if we don't agree, we still respect each other. And I think the people are missing out. And I would see a lot of Facebook chatter about so many different things, COVID-19 or Trump or anybody else or whatever political affiliation. And right away, I would hear people call idiots or stupid or like name calling people, instead of actually saying, well, I don't agree with him because of this, and making a rational reason rather than people just calling each other names. Because once you call somebody a name to me, you pretty much pretty much cancel out any point at all that you might have.
Well, that's the general rule of debate, by the way. If you resort to name calling, you've lost the debate. You don't have an argument. So because you don't have an argument, you're debating. You're insulting.
One of the things about debates that I've always found, it's like, I don't, obviously I do not pretend to know everything what's going on or whatever the case is. And sometimes I might say something, and somebody might have a different point of view, might say something, but intelligent. And if they open up my mind, I respect them for doing that. If somebody says you're an idiot, you don't know what you're talking about, anything like that, then I think that's a total waste of time, because in reality, it's not the question. I don't know what I'm talking about. I wouldn't say that to somebody. I wouldn't insult somebody like that. And if somebody's saying that to me, that's depicting their intelligence.
Right. It's not right.
So that's the thing. If they're saying, well, you know what, really it should be, let's look at it this way. Or if it's debates are about learning also. And this is what really kills me in a lot of these political debates, instead of a lot of these candidates debating the issue. And again, it does not make a difference to me which political party you're on. A debate is a debate. It's about intellectual facts. It's about plus concrete evidence, and basically just trying to open up people's minds about certain things. That does not necessarily mean you have to agree with what the person is saying, but at least you have an ear open, you're listening, and you're saying, this person has an interesting point. I never thought about it that way.
Okay,
And
so let me ask you this then.
yeah.
So earlier in the week, we found out that Nick Cannon, the host of The Masked Singer, the former host of America's Got Talent,
Mm-hmm.
had a podcast where he said some pretty awful things about white people and Jewish people. Do we give him a pass for that because it's his opinion? Do we allow him to get away with it, or do we hold him accountable for what he says?
No, we have to hold them accountable, because if we don't, if people just sweep it under the rug, then it invites more people to say more bad things about about any minority group, any religious group, or whatever. Especially if you're a public figure. If you're a public figure, whether or not you do a podcast, I mean, look, you take a look at our shows. We never see anything derogatory against anyone.
No, we try not to. We try not to.
You know, I'm just saying, like, legitimately, like if a person is, let's say, left wing, or if a person is this or a person is like that, you may not agree with them, but you don't, like you just said before, you don't insult them. You don't go out of your way to insult them. You may not agree with what their point of view is. That's fine. That's what political debates are. Respectful debates. But if somebody that's a public figure that right away goes out, insults a minority group, insults a religious group, that person has to be accountable. People are going to say, listen, that's not acceptable. If a person does something wrong, whether or not it's a minority, whether or not it's a religious group, you can't say everybody in that minority group, everybody in that religious group is all going to be like that. If a person does a mistake, the person did an independent mistake.
Yeah. No, I agree.
You can't put all your eggs in one basket, saying if one person does this, everybody in that skin color, everybody in that religious group is going to do it. That's completely unfair.
Okay, so with the Nick Cannon story, CBS Viacom fired him immediately. Mm-hmm. So he produced a bunch of shows on CBS, and they fired him as the producer of these shows immediately. And the owner of CBS Viacom, Sharon Redstone, got up and said that this kind of behavior and this kind of talk is not acceptable on our network from anybody on our network at any time. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to engage this kind of talk, we cannot have you employed with our network. So that's commendable. I thought that was a very commendable way to handle it. So Nick Cannon, seeing his career starting to collapse, came up with a hasty apology where it was the woe to me apology. Oh, but I was on for 25 years, and now I'm gone, and the Jews control the media, and because I said something bad against the Jews, now I'm losing my job, so I'm sorry to my Jewish brethren. Please don't make me lose my job. That was his first apology.
Oh, boy.
Fox, the network owned by Disney, did not fire Nick Cannon. He didn't fire them. They didn't fire him. He came up with a second apology about a day later, after people called him out for his horrific first apology. He came up with a second apology where he said, listen, I have a lot of learning to do. That old learning thing. I'm learning, and I'm not really a racist. I'm just ignorant, and I'm learning. Give me a break. Right? So that was the second apology. So Fox still has him employed. In my opinion, now I'm not big on the cancel culture. I don't think we should cancel things or people. I'm not huge on that. But in my opinion, when somebody comes out blatantly and says that that white people and Jewish people are no better than animals, and that they usurp the black guy, and they go on with this whole Nation of Islam thing. And Nation of Islam, of course, is a hate group. Let's be clear about that. Louis Farrakhan's a hate leader, and Nation of Islam is a hate group. When somebody goes about and pushes the philosophy of the Nation of Islam, and pushes the hateful philosophy of the Nation of Islam, I don't think that they should be given a national platform. I think they should be pulled off the air. That's the way I feel.
I think so too.
Not that I think that just because I disagree with something, it's canceled. But here is somebody promoting hatred. There's a difference between promoting hatred and pushing a political point of view that might be unpopular. There's a huge difference between the two of them.
I'm actually surprised that the sponsors for Fox, they didn't threaten to pull out, or they didn't threaten to boycott Fox because they're still keeping Nick Cannon employed.
Well, the fallout of this hasn't really come to its full peak yet.
Okay.
This just kind of broke this week. It usually takes a week or two for the momentum to begin. But I have a feeling that by the time The Masked Singer comes around again, if it comes around again, if COVID ever goes away and we're allowed to have TV shows again, if The Masked Singer comes around again, I'm skeptical that Nick Cannon's going to be the host.
That's what I would think so too. Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because this guy spent his entire life in Hollywood. He built his career step by step. I mean, he started at the bottom and worked his way to the top.
He was married to Mariah Carey at one point.
Yeah, he was. And he worked his way to the top, and now it's all coming crashing down. But when you engage in stupidity and you engage in racism, that's what's going to happen to you.
Many people would die for an opportunity like this to get in front. I mean, look, there was a certain well-known person that was a former Montreal radio personality that got into a big talk show circuit. Put the chairman of the network on the air without notifying him, and he wound up getting fired on the air.
I was his producer. I was there when that happened.
And that was a person that had so much potential.
Oh, for sure.
He was getting paid. He was getting a certain percentage of the gross of the earnings of the show and everything, and he was doing very, very well for himself.
Yeah.
And now you don't hear. So the thing is, it's amazing when you get this type.
I produced that show, and he was warned. He was warned multiple times, and he did it anyway.
Yeah. So the thing is, it's like, oh, I'm invincible, and sometimes that's the old-fashioned ego. When you get into a business like this, you feel like you're untouchable, and then you get in. Oh, nothing's going to happen to me. I'm invincible. This is my name, and I've been on the business for so many years. And I remember when I first.
But you know what happens? You know what happens with a guy like that? Sorry for interrupting, but you know what happens with a guy like that though, is that when he gets fired, his whole crew gets fired. So he was out of a job. I was out of a job. There were two other people working. They were out of jobs. We were all out of jobs because he didn't listen to a warning, and all of us lost our jobs.
Yeah, because he felt that you were also borne the same responsibility because you produced the show.
Right.
So the thing, I mean, it's not right because, each person's decision is independent and it's their own. So you shouldn't take the fall for something that someone else did that you have no control. All you could do is say, listen, you shouldn't do this, and warn him for not only his good, but for the show's good as well. He decided not to listen to you, and then, like you said, everybody got fired from the show.
Yeah, that's what happens. The show gets shut down, and everybody loses their job.
So the thing is, in this business, this is where ego is it's absolutely ridiculous. And I know one thing: when I first got my first commercial radio job in Ottawa, I was told, it doesn't make a difference of how many years you're doing the show, whether or not you're behind the board or you're in front of the microphone. Always remember that every day, you never take advantage of your job. You thank God that you're doing this job. You're doing something you love to do, but also at the same time, you're making a name for yourself. You're representing the station and the community. You have to remember that you have this awesome power to the point that you can't misuse it. Like if you're doing a newscast, as you know, you're responsible for doing the facts. You're responsible by not going, not doing anything that'd be contrary to the policies of the broadcasting unit. Otherwise, you will be fired.
I remember I was about 23 years old when I started in commercial radio. And that was a long time ago. Sheldon, we're old. Yeah. I was 23 years old when I started in commercial radio. Sheldon was there the first day I was there too. And I remember somewhere around a year or 2 years after I got into radio, I was bothering the station. I wanted to get my own show. And I was bothering the station, giving them demo tapes and, going through the process of trying to get my own show. And there was another guy working at the station. I'm not going to mention names, but another guy working at the station who was given a show. It was just handed to him. Here you go. Have a show.
Hmm.
And he didn't have to fight for it. He didn't have to work for it. He didn't have to do anything for it. And the guy was around my age. He was maybe a year younger than me, a year older than me, somewhere around my age. And I was his producer. I produced the show. And he would come in every week, and he would be complaining that he had to prepare for the show, and he had to do the show, and he had to do it, and he's preparing for it, and so much work. Complaining, complaining, complaining. And I'd sit there and listen to him complain. He'd sit in the studio with me and complain. And I'd sit there and listen to him complain. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, wow, here is a guy who feels entitled. Here's a guy with a massive ego. I'm struggling here trying to get a show on the station, fighting for years to try to get a show on the station, which never actually happened. I mean, I got on the station for, I think, what was it, 6 hours? 6 hours in the entire 12 years I was there. They let me on the air.
Hmm.
Aside from the co-hosting I had to do with the very sick Jack Finnegan, but aside from that, they gave me 6 hours of my own show, and that was just to replace something. It was kind of filler in between everything. So here I am fighting to get a show. This guy was handed it to him on a silver platter, and all he's doing is complaining. And I'm like, wow, how entitled are you? And that's what reminded me. That was the story that came to mind when I read this, when I heard the story about Nick Cannon. Here's a guy who worked hard to get to the top. Nobody handed him anything. He worked really hard to get there. Gets to the top and then becomes self-destructive and does and says these things that no normal person would ever dream that saying these things out loud would gain them popularity, or would allow them to continue to to be on a national stage. And it just bothers me that that people who work that hard and people who are that focused on career could destroy their career just like that.
It's called success going
not
to
even
their
think
heads.
about it.
That's what it's called, success going to their heads. It's a part of an ego, and it's part of also just letting it just go. Instead of controlling it and be grateful that you have that opportunity, it just goes to your head, and then you feel like it's the big word entitlement, and many careers have fallen like that. You and I have known many people that's happened to, and it's a question of the big C word, control. To control this type of, because it's not an ordinary job. It's not like an assembly line factory. Whether or not you're doing the news, hosting a show, producing a show, your name is out there. Your name is out there, and it's amazing it's amazing the power that has. But at the same time, you have to be thankful. And look, I have this opportunity every once in a while for replacement for a commercial radio station. To do news. I never took it for granted. I always appreciated my boss. I was appreciated the opportunity. I never let it go to my head.
Yeah, you can't.
And the thing is, once you let it go to your head, your career is finished. And as easily as you can, as well, the hardest thing, it's not easy when you first get into the business, as you know, you have to make demo tapes. You really have to pay your dues, work all these different types of hours, all these different types of shifts. And you really have to go. Really, it's almost like even in the small town where years ago, before the broadcasting schools, you basically had to sweep the floors and clean the toilets and everything like that, and then do the news and do everything in a small town radio station. And you know what? It takes a lot. For me, as when I got my radio career off the ground, there were many doors that were slammed in my face, and I could have easily given up or whatever. And I said, no, this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to do this in high school. And I was very, very lucky. And every single opportunity, no matter what I do, no matter if it's paid or not paid, look, I'm always very, very thankful to you. I'm thankful to anybody that gives me a podcasting opportunity or paid opportunity of any kind. I always know I never say, I'm this and that. I'm not at a podium. I worked very hard to what I've accomplished. You worked very hard for what you have accomplished. But you know what? You have a reputation. Your reputation is stellar. It's very strong. Same thing with me. And I don't take it for granted. You don't take your reputation for granted. Once you take the reputation for granted, Then you go into the entitlement period, and then that's when
You know what it is, Sheldon?
all the hard work just breaks off, and that's where things happen.
You know what it is, Sheldon? Well, I realize, and I'm sure you do too, that every time I flick on a microphone, every time I type a word into Facebook, every time I post a picture or forward a meme, that's my reputation.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're only remembered for the last thing you ever do. So,
Yep.
so if this show wasn't good, I'd be remembered for a bad show, right? People only remember the last thing you did. So
Yep.
we had the most popular radio show on 1650 AM. There was nobody more popular than us. We had tens of thousands of listeners. Verified, tens of thousands of listeners. And the station didn't appreciate us, and there we left, right? I never, ever dreamt that I could get on the air and just express hatred towards somebody. I didn't even do that against the station, and the station mistreated us for years. They mistreated me. They mistreated the show for years. And I never once got on the air and expressed hatred towards anybody. I was just grateful that they gave me, that they carried the show for the 18 years we were on there. And I was grateful that I was able to move the show online and be able to do the show online. I've never badmouthed them.
Well, you see, I'm very fortunate in terms of Bell because I learned a lot of stuff from CJD and Bell, where I would never have been able to get my radio career off the ground, and it's now spawned me in a lot of areas. And I go into a lot of places, and even look, it's been now going to my 7th year that I've been out of CJD. People still remember who I am, and and I say, I'm really, it's really appreciated that they've, I was working with some amazing people. I worked with George Balkan. I worked with Gord Sinclair. I worked with like the best of the best of the best.
Yeah.
And I worked with Jack, not as long as you worked with Jack, but I worked with Jack at one point. I worked with Dave Fisher. I worked with Tommy Schneermacher for 17 years, doing a radio show. Tommy, in many cases, would say I knew him better than he knew himself. I knew when he was going to go to a break. I knew everything about what he was going to do. His characteristics, his mannerisms, and everything. And he taught me that so many people have taught me so many things. And for me to say that, I know it all. And that's the thing, especially with a business like this. And it's not only this business, but it's a business that you and I could equate. You and I are obviously very familiar with. How many people do you and I both know? And I could name it. I could probably name you off like 10 people off the top of my head. Off air, and I can see how many people really blew smoke, like really thought that they were, they thought that they were it. They were like G-D gift,
and they were all humbled at the end. That's the,
it's like amazing how when you work with a lot of these people that are legendary people on the air, and then they shut off their mics and they go back home to their families, or like I worked with Tommy, and I'll tell you that Tommy's the same person on the air as he is off the air. He's a tremendous sense of humor. He's really fantastic people. And there's other people that are completely different, that are very, very introverted. Like Tommy will speak. He writes books. He's very gifted. He could go on stage and make people laugh. Like he's a multi-talented person. But you have like people that George Balkan, that was an artist that a lot of people didn't know, but he was like a consummate broadcaster, and a lot of these people were very down to earth, but a lot of people were very, very egotistical people.
Yeah, I see a few of them on Facebook.
Sure, for sure.
There are people on Facebook, and this goes back to the whole ego. Nick Cannon said the things he said because of his ego, and because he felt he was untouchable, and that he would be able to get away with saying what he said. So he said what he said. Hopefully, he'll pay the price for expressing a hateful opinion.
Yeah.
That I hope. I mean, we'll see what happens. But I look on Facebook, and I post a lot of political stuff on Facebook. I don't know if you noticed. I post a lot of political stuff on Facebook, and it's always the same 3-4 people who respond, and they're usually talking down to me or being arrogant or or being idiots. I hate to say it, but they are. And and when I say being idiots, I'm saying their behavior is idiotic. They're not idiots. Their behavior is idiotic. The things they say is idiotic. Because
once they talk down to you anyway, whatever points they have is completely nullified.
So
they could be the smartest people in the world, but right away, as soon as they talk down to a person, no. And you know what? I've blocked many people, and I've got rid of a lot of people on Facebook because I don't expect everybody to agree with me, okay? But again, it's the same thing like I've talked to you about many times. Even if you and I don't agree on a lot of things, and there's a lot of things we do agree on. It's not that we always disagree with everything, and you say something, I automatically disagree with you because you're Howie Silbiger. But I'm saying there's a lot of things I agree with you. There's a lot of things you agree with me. There's things that I don't agree with you. There's things you don't agree with me. But at least we respect one another. I don't talk down to you. You don't talk down to me. We respect one another.
Yeah.
And if let's say you get these 3 or 4 people that are going onto your Facebook page, and right away they're talking down to you, what's their point that they're talking down to you? It's because you're right, and because they think that if they try to insult you that they're better people? No. But if they come up with something that makes you raise your eyebrows and say, maybe they have a point.
Some people feel that if they discredit you personally, that discredits your opinion. So if you're if you're pushing a point of view, and they feel that if they come on and discredit you as a person, so Sheldon Eric Fried, I'm going to discredit Sheldon Eric Fried, not the opinion that Sheldon Eric Fried is expressing, but Sheldon Eric Fried himself, I'm going to discredit. They feel that if they do that, then the opinion is automatically discredited. So
that's the thing with political when it comes to. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Aside from the show, I have a lot of other interests outside of the show, and I do a lot of different things. I'm a very busy guy over the course of the week, and I do multiple, like lots of different stuff. And one thing about me is that I've always been a big fan of the United States of America. My bar mitzvah theme was Red, White, and Blue, Uncle Sam. That was the theme of my bar mitzvah. That's how far back it goes with me and my love affair with the United States, okay?
Okay.
Even before that. I've flown an American flag in my house forever, as far back as I can remember, right? I'm not American, but I happen to love the States. I love the history of the United States. I love the whole concept of a republic. I like the idea of the United States of America. And I like the idea of the freedoms that a country like the United States gives their citizens. And so over the course of the years, I've learned a lot of American history, and I've studied American history. I studied at the university level. I've studied on a personal level. I've done a lot of study on American history. So just last week, one of the guys who speaks down to me all the time, who's always answering my Facebook posts, and he speaks down to me all the time, and he's always insulting me, and he's always doing something nasty. We were talking about the removal of Confederate statues.
Okay.
And I said, my position, by the way, I'll be clear on my position on the Confederate statues, and let me be extremely clear on this. I believe that statues that depict Confederate soldiers should be removed, simply because they were traitors to the United States. They were trying to break up the Union, and traitors should not be commemorated. So in the United States, if they have military bases named after Confederate leaders, or they have statues up on Confederate leaders, or they have schools named after Confederate leaders, those names should be changed. They shouldn't have been there to start with. Not because I think it's racist to have those names. It's not racist to have those names. But I think that it's wrong that a country, a free and independent country, should be memorializing traitors who tried to break up the country.
Okay, fair enough.
So the Civil War, the Civil War, had the Confederacy won the Civil War, the Union would have been the traitors. Had the Confederacy lost the Civil War, the Confederacy were the traitors. That's the way history works. Okay. And so these people should not be commemorated. So this is the way I think. Now, if there was a plaque here in Montreal on the bay saying that just after the Civil War, Confederate leader Jefferson Davis slept here in the spot where the bay stands downtown. There was a house, And he slept there for a week or 2 weeks while he was hiding out from the Union armies before he worked out a deal to go back and not be charged with treason. So some guy walked by and said, "Oh, it's Confederacy. We have to take it down." And the Bay ran out and took it down. And that I thought was wrong. Okay, so let me explain why one is right and one is wrong. Why is it okay to take down a statue of Jefferson Davis in the United States, and it's not right to take down a plaque saying that Jefferson Davis slept here in Canada? Let me explain to you why I think one is right, one is wrong, because I think it's important to make the differentiation. In Canada, a plaque on a wall, even in the States, a plaque on a wall saying, in this spot, this happened during the Civil War, or just after the Civil War, is a historical point. So when somebody reads it and says, "Oh, Jefferson Davis, who's Jefferson Davis? Let's go look back and let's read up on the history." It encourages people. Plaques encourage people to go and study the history if they're interested, and the plaque is interesting and the plaque makes an interesting point. People might go back and learn the history. So it encourages people to go back and study history, and history is important to know. Just for those listening who don't understand why it's important to study history, history is important to know because history works in trends, so it's cycles. And history repeats itself over and over again. So if you see the cycle reoccurring, there's time to stop whatever horrible thing is going to happen at the end of the cycle. So it's important to know history and to recognize the trends in order to stop atrocities from happening. We don't learn enough history, in my opinion. So taking down the plaque of Jefferson Davis, because it's an interesting point that the leader of the Confederacy was in Montreal and staying in a house on the corner of St. Catherine Street in downtown Montreal. It's an interesting footnote in history. And it doesn't insult anybody. It's not saying that we supported the Confederacy. It's just an interesting point of history. And taking that down is wrong, in my opinion.
Okay.
On the other hand, having a statue standing may generate somebody to say, "Who was this guy and why is there a statue about him?" That might be the point. But statues aren't there to generate questions about history. Statues are there to glorify the person on the statue. They're glorification. So statues should be taken down of people who don't fit into the narrative of the country that they're in. That's why
that makes a lot of sense.
That's why I had no objections when when after the Bolsheviks, the Soviets were overrun, they took down all the statues of Stalin. That's fine, because those statues were there just to glorify Stalin. They weren't there to promote education.
Right.
Now, the statues of the Confederacy, most of the statues in the United States went up in the 1970s and 80s. And they were mostly in opposition to the desegregation of the South. So they put up these statues, and these statues were intentionally put up to insult the black people in the South. So taking them down I have no problem with that. Taking down a statue of Abraham Lincoln put up by black slaves to thank him for the emancipation of black slavery is wrong, in my opinion. So you see, the statues have different weights, and you have to really look at each one and understand why each one exists in order to decide whether they should exist or not. They should be taken by case by case.
Yeah.
You know?
100%. Yeah. You have to take a look at each one. Exactly. Yeah.
So this is why I support taking down statues. Certain statues, not all statues, because certain people deserve to be glorified. Abraham Lincoln definitely deserves to be glorified as a Republican president who passed the Emancipation Proclamation and freed blacks from slavery in the United States, gave them civil rights. Well, he didn't give them civil rights. The next two presidents gave him civil rights. I think he deserves the glory that he's given.
Okay.
Kneeling for the national anthem of the United States, I think is wrong. You want to protest, find other ways to protest. That's not a good way to protest, because when you kneel for the national anthem, you are showing disrespect for the country. And showing disrespect for the country is not making your point. You want to make a point that there's police brutality. You want to make a point that you're upset with the police department or something else. Insulting the country is not the way to do it. I mean, that's my personal opinion. People disagree with me. That's fine. You're entitled to your opinion, too. And if you want to express it, you can feel free to call in. 1-877-669-1292. 1-877-669-1292. Sheldon Freed is here with me. This is the Howie Silbiger Show on the True Talk Radio Network. And once again, let me give you the numbers one more time. 1-877-669-1292.
You know, I could say, like, speaking of the police and everything, it's amazing that now there's been a huge spike in crime in New York, and there's a lot of speculation, a lot of talk that a lot of police have been backing off. A lot of them are. There's been a fair amount of resignations.
Did you blame them?
No, no. Again, it goes to everything else. It's like everybody takes actions of a police officer, like Chauvin, and right away they're equating all police officers are like that. And I'm sorry, that's wrong. Again, I'm not saying that all police officers are innocent either. This is where people have to realize that you have to take each person and each situation separate. You can't bunch in everybody. You can't say every single police officer is racist. You can't say that every single police officer, black, white, whatever, whoever, is right away that's going to hurt minority people. You can't condemn an entire police forces for the actions of a few.
Well,
that's the biggest problem where people have. They can't associate the actions of a few as opposed to many people.
That's because of mass media. Mass media is that's the result of mass media.
Well, mass media has always been the enemy of a lot of people. They always try to put everybody in the same hut and everything like that. And
look,
it's wrong.
CNN was dying. They were on the verge of bankruptcy, and in order to save themselves, CNN grabbed onto this whole Black Lives Matters movement and pushed it forward. Without this, they would have been in the dump heap of history.
A lot of this media stuff, it's called sensationalism. That's what sells. Remember, you and I know that.
Yeah, they want to get they want to get eyeballs, and that's the only way to get eyeballs. Now,
when CNN first had the thing with Iraq, the Iraq hostages, or the situation with in Iraq, they had these special technology that at that time they had these special phones, very unique to them, and that's what pirated CNN so well, for the technology. And then they just went downhill.
Yeah.
Now, like you said, they were on the verge of being bankrupt, and now they took this thing, they grabbed hold of it, because they want to have, sensationalism sells. Same thing as the papers, same thing as everything.
The problem I have with organizations like CNN, like Fox, like ABC, NBC, MSNBC,
they never did.
CNN will offer you a leftist.
They haven't in many years.
CNN will offer you a leftist perspective on the news. So they don't offer you the news anymore. What they do is offer you opinion on the news. So CNN's Don Lemon will come on and make some glorified statement.
Yeah.
And it'll lean totally left, farther than the leftist guy you know. And then Sean Hannity will come on to Fox and make some statement that leans farther right than the rightist guy you know. And then you have to kind of watch both of them to kind of balance it out a little bit. And the problem is, though, if there are certain people who only watch one network and they get all their information from one network. And so when the leader of Black Lives Matter has gone to CNN, I'm going to use this as an example. When the leaders of Black Lives Matter had gone onto CNN and said, listen, our goal at the end of all this is to remove Donald Trump from office before the next election. Said it clearly on CNN, verbalized it.
See, that's wrong. That's wrong. That's wrong.
Okay, verbalized it on CNN.
Wrong.
And then in the same interview, the same person said, yes, you have to understand, we are trained Marxists, and our idea is to overthrow the government and install a Marxist state, right? And so they said this live on CNN, and nobody challenged them. And this is where my problem lies, is that as a journalist, when I was a journalist, I'm not a journalist now, but when I was a journalist, even as an interviewer, because I do a lot of interviews, if somebody made a statement like that during an interview, everything would come to a screeching halt right there, and I would go back and say, "Wait a second! I thought Black Lives Matter was your, getting Donald Trump. How does Donald Trump fit into all this?" Right? I would actually question the whole idea of what they were saying, but nobody at CNN did that. And that is the saddest thing in the world. So when they didn't question them and they didn't harp on the fact that these people said that our main goal is to take down the government, to put in a Marxist state, and that and the main goal of these protests is to get Donald Trump out of office, when nobody challenged them on that, then the population who watches CNN and who believe everything they see and hear, that was just glossed over and they never focused on it. People don't even know it. They might have watched the interview and missed it.
I've always said this for many, many times, Howie, and you know this, okay? I've always said media has a responsibility, and media has no business to tell people about electing a certain government. Media has no business to tell you who to vote for. Media has no business in saying that they want to overthrow a government. Media's responsibility, and this is how you and I were brought up, being in the old-fashioned journalism, the old-fashioned work ethic, is there's three sides to every story. One side, the other side, and there's the truth. And it's up to the people that we give them the information, and it's up to people to make their own assessment, their own opinions, their own judgment. It's not for it's not for the media to tell people, number one, who to vote for, what side that you should be in your political values. No, that's not what the media is. The media gives the facts, and you as a consumer, you take the facts, maybe in print or in any kind of electronic broadcasting, you take the information, then you formulate your own opinion. The media just gives you the information. The media has to give you the responsibility in making your own decisions up.
Yeah, unfortunately, the mainstream media in the States has become more opinion media than news media. So,
and the thing is, too, it also goes by what the owner's view is. And look, it's happened in Canada, in a very big media conglomerate company, that a media CEO got caught from the CRTC.
Yeah, it was Bell Media.
Yeah. So the thing, and he got caught. It was in the news, and he got caught, hook, line, and sinker. He was caught red-handed.
I tell this story often, and I'll tell it again because it's a good story. When I started in journalism, I was 14 years old. And when I was 15, they started sending me, I started writing a column at 14. And at 15, they started sending me out to cover events. So I was sent out to cover a pro-Israel rally. And there was a counter rally across the street with pro-Palestinian people. Mm-hmm. So you had a pro-Israel rally on one side of the street and an Arab rally on the other side of the street. And as a young journalist, because now I was an officially paid reporter at 15 years old, made me a young journalist, I felt it was my responsibility to get both sides of the story. Hey, if I'm going to cover the story, it has to be objective. I'm not going to put my opinion into it. I'm not going to write my perspective into it. My perspective was pretty clear even back then. I'm not going to write my perspective into it. I'm a journalist. I have to be objective. So I spoke to the organizers of the pro-Israel rally. Then I spoke to the organizers of the pro-Arab rally, the pro-Palestinian rally. And I got some people on both sides to give comments. Aside from the leadership, I got some of the participants to give comments. And then I went down, I sat down, and it took hours for me to write the article. I wasn't used to writing these kind of articles, my first time. It took me hours to sift through everything that ever was written and write up an article that was objective. I showed it to different people. People read it, and they said, this is perfect, right? It's objective. You're not... I can't tell from reading this article what side you stand on, which is the goal of any journalist, right? Mm-hmm. Present the facts. Period. I gave the article to my editor. I get a call a couple of days later, and the editor says to me, listen, you got to change the article. It has to be pro-Israel. It can't be anything else. So I said to him, I'm sorry, I don't understand. You asked me to cover the event. Now I've covered the event, and this is how the event happened. This is what happened at the event. These are the players on both sides. I don't understand why I would not be able to present both sides. I mean, this is journalism, right? Mm-hmm. And he said to me, listen, the publisher pays the bills. And let me teach you a lesson, he says. The publisher pays the bills. If the publisher wants only one side, then we print only one side.
Gee, that's wrong.
So change the article. I had integrity even back then, and I said, I'm not changing the article. And the editor said to me, look, you might not be able to write another article if you don't change it. And I said to him, I don't care. I'm not changing the article. Well, they ran the article with my byline and a completely different article under it. They rewrote the article, and they put my byline on it. And they rewrote
so
it.
they completely fabricated your article.
And they,
Wow.
they rewrote it to have the slant that the publisher wanted. So
boy.
So when someone tells me I don't understand media bias, I understand it better than anybody else. I lived through it. I've seen it time and time and time again. I've worked for many different publications. I've worked for a couple of different radio stations. I've seen it time and time and time again. Let me just tell you another story. On Radio Shalom, we were on 1650 AM for 16 years. That was a long time to be on the air there. And over that time, I did a very Jewish radio show, very pro-Jewish radio show. And I had many, many, many guests, thousands of guests over 16 years, maybe 6,000 or 7,000 guests on my show over the time. Now, on occasion, I would want to invite a reform or a conservative rabbi to be on the air with me because they had something interesting to say. They published an interesting book. Something happened that was interesting, right? And I was forbidden from having these people on the air. And so, and my argument, and their argument was, well, we don't want to give them a platform. And I said, well, that's so wrong. If I'm doing a show, a community show, then the community should be invited to the show. I can't exclude people from the community if it's a community show. So I don't understand why I can't have these people on. So for years I listened to them. I didn't bring these people onto the show. Then one day I decided that there was a new female rabbi in town. She was working for one of the synagogues. I don't remember which one. And she called me and said, hey, I'd like to come onto your show. Could you introduce me to the community? And I said, sure. And I brought her in. And I was warned before I did the show not to refer to her as rabbi. And I said, wouldn't that be rude if this woman who comes in and refers to herself as rabbi comes in and I don't refer to her as rabbi? How rude would that be? I invited her onto my show. She's my guest. How rude would it be for me not to refer to her as rabbi? So the management of the station there said, listen, these are our policies, and you have to follow the policies. You're on the station, you got to follow the policies. So we went on to the air, and she came in, and I said, I would like to introduce you to Rabbi and her name, right? And I referred to her as Rabbi for the entire show. Well, the management was livid. They were nuts. They went crazy. How dare you? And you defied us. And how could you do that? And it's horrible what you did. And you've ruined the station. Now, that was essentially their take, that I ruined the Jewish nature of the station by referring to this woman as a rabbi when she was on the show with me. I got letters from the community saying, how dare you bring a female rabbi onto the show? Letters and letters and letters. Tens and hundreds of letters. And phone calls. My voicemail at the station was full of people yelling at me. So I got on the next show. I was on every night. And I got on the next show and I said, listen. I said, the lines were open the entire show. As I say on this show, the lines were open the entire show. Anybody who disagreed with anything she said, anything I said, any verbology I used, anything at all, could have called in. You had the opportunity to call in. So when you didn't call in, that meant that either you didn't care enough to call in and challenge me at that time, or that it was irrelevant to you at the time, or you just didn't care at all. I mean, it's one or the other, right? So you didn't care enough about the show to call in to say, "Hey, you're ruining your show," or you didn't care enough to call in, or nothing insulted you. You didn't get bothered by anything. The end result was that the people who were there at the interview, and there were a few people there in the room with us, thought the interview was great. She was a great guest, and I really wished that she would have agreed to come back, but she got a lot of pressure on her end not to come back too, which was a shame because I wasn't able to get her back on the air after that. She promised to come in at least once a month, and we would talk, and she never did because of community pressure. Because the same people who were sending me mail and condemning me were condemning her on her side. So this is how it works, Sheldon. Unfortunately, this is how media works. And
See,
any
and that's a big problem too. It's again, it goes what I was saying from before. Is like you said, if people would have called, let's say, and they did not agree with her, if they did not agree with something you said or did not agree with your guest, and any guest that would say, but right away they would insult them, or they would leave messages on your voicemail insulting you, insulting at that time CJRS, insulting anybody else or whatever, instead of actually being methodical and being a respectful debater, that lose all sorts of credibility. And even if her own community were saying the same thing, was putting pressure on her and stuff like that. All right, not saying that if they don't agree that she should be on, at least be respectful not to go on. But if she was willing to go on, and she was a nice guest and everything. Look, I remember I was your producer when you had the different parties that came in. You didn't show any favoritism for any of the political debaters. You treated each and every one of them fair. You asked the hard questions. You gave them time to answer. You gave them time
But
to
Shelton,
process the question.
do you remember the fallout from that federal election debate? You were there for the fallout too.
Yeah,
Afterwards.
I was there for the fallout. Yep,
Yeah.
yep. And like, I just don't understand people, that people just don't think. And like I said,
So let's talk about the fallout, because I think it's interesting, because it's important that people understand. It's important that people understand that there is repercussions for everything, right? And
yeah.
So we had a national debate. It was a debate. It was a political debate. It was for the national elections, for the federal elections. And we had the debate on the show. We did that every election. We had a debate on the show. We don't do that anymore, but when we were on there, we used to do that. And we had this debate, and the conservative candidate, thought that because I'm an Orthodox Jew, and that because I profess conservative values, that I would give him a free ride. And that's what he thought. And so he came in unprepared for the interview. Unprepared for the debate. Sorry, not the interview. It wasn't the interview, it was the debate. He came in unprepared for the debate. Remember, Sheldon, he had that huge binder with him? And
do I remember that?
He was leafing through the binder, trying to find the answers to the questions we were asking him, because he didn't know them, because he didn't bother preparing. Because he thought I would give him a cakewalk, because he was pro-Israel. When I didn't give him a cakewalk, I'll tell you what the follow was, because I don't know if you were there for all of it, Sheldon.
Okay.
After that debate happened, and the conservative candidate was trounced, he was destroyed in that debate. In fact, that debate brought up a whole topic that became a scandal. I don't know if you remember the whole thing about the flyers.
Oh boy, do I remember? Oh, yeah. Okay.
And that was picked up by the National Post newspaper, and became a huge scandal, Canadian scandal. So even after all that happened, and that was a result of a question I asked him, and then the Liberal candidate got up and said, "What about this?" And he pulled out this flyer, and then the whole thing blew up, which was great. I mean, it gave us free publicity. I don't mind free publicity. I don't mind breaking news sometimes. After that, I went to hear the same candidate speak at a local synagogue. He was giving a speech at a local synagogue. And I went in and I sat down as one of the audience members. I wasn't the moderator. I wasn't involved in the debate at all. It was a day or 2 days after our debate. And he was debating again. The three candidates were debating again. And I went and I sat down to listen to this debate, a political debate. Well, the Conservative campaign manager came up to me and said to me, "You can't be here. You have to leave now." So I said to him, "Excuse me?" He says to me, "You can't be here. You have to leave now. If you don't leave now, we're going to get the RCMP. They're going to remove you. You have to go." So I said to him, "Why do I have to go?" He says, "Because you made our candidate look stupid and we don't want you here. So you got to go." So after arguing with the guy, and I mean, it was a pretty silly argument. We had a pretty silly argument. After arguing with the guy, we moved into the lobby. The debate was happening in the big room, and we moved into the lobby, and because it was just too noisy. We were getting too noisy to be in the main room, so I moved into the lobby with him, and he tried to physically remove me from the building. Like, he tried to physically remove me from the building. Now, I'm not a huge guy, but I could defend myself, and I fended him off. And then he said to me, listen, he says, the Prime Minister's coming to speak in Montreal next week. You're not invited. You can't come in. I'm putting you on the blacklist. So I said, okay, interesting, right? So CTV News was there, and CTV News was recorded the whole incident from the beginning to the end. They happened to have been standing next to me when this whole thing started. And they started the cameras rolling, and they followed us into the lobby, and they recorded the entire thing. So I went up to the CTV reporter, who I happen to have known for multiple years. And I said to her, listen, I said to her, are you going to run this? Because, I mean, this really shouldn't be the story. I don't care if you run it. It doesn't bother me because, I mean, I didn't do anything. I was just sitting there. So I really don't care if you run this, but this really should not be the story. The story should be the debate, not what happened here. And she said, I have to think about it, and I'll let you know. I said, okay. Anyway, they did not end up running the story. But I went to the Prime Minister speaking. He was speaking at the Y on Westbury. And I went to hear the Prime Minister speak. And I got into the line, and I got to the front of the line, and I gave my name, because that was the procedure. And I was told that I was on the blacklist and I wasn't able to get in.
You had a media press pass or no?
Yeah. I had registered with the Prime Minister's office because that's the way media works. You register with the Prime Minister's office, and then when you show up, you're on an approved list, and they let you in right away.
Okay.
So I said, why would I be on the blacklist? I mean, could you give me a reason why I'm on the blacklist? So the media press person who was there said to me, listen, I have to call Ottawa and find out. Let me make a phone call. I waited. She called me back. She says the campaign manager put you on the blacklist. He didn't give a reason. So I said, fine. I said, take me off the blacklist. If you can't give me a reason to be on the blacklist, then take me off the blacklist. There's no reason to not let me in. I'm not a security risk. And the only time anyone's put on the blacklist is if they're a terrorist or a security risk. I'm neither. So take me off that blacklist and give me a pass to go inside. There's no reason I shouldn't be inside. She hummed and she hawed, and then she went to get her manager, and she came back and she took me off the list and put me on. I got inside. So I'm standing in the press. There was an area for press. I was standing in the press area on the press platform. And we were directly across from the candidates. And the candidates' campaign managers were all sitting next to them. This particular campaign manager looked up and saw me standing there and had a conniption fit. The guy went nuts. He got up. He started screaming across the room at me. He came running, bolting across the room. I was standing behind a bunch of cameras. There were a bunch of TV cameras in front of me. I was right behind the TV cameras. He came bolting across the room. The cameras all turned to him, screaming like a maniac. Why are you here? You're on the blacklist. You can't be here. Get out. Who let him in?
Talk
Security.
about him embarrassing himself?
I was just standing there. And
oh, my God.
One of the reporters standing next to me leans over to me and says to me, what did you do? What did you put into his cornflakes this morning, right?
Oh, my God.
Like, I have no idea. The guy's nuts. Look at him.
Wow.
And the guy went totally nuts. That ended up on the news that night. On every network. Okay, and they all interviewed me, and they said to me, well, why is he angry at you? Like, why was he screaming like that at you? And my answer to them was quite simply, I hosted a debate, a radio debate, and his candidate looked like an idiot because he didn't prepare himself. And they said to me, you're kidding, right? I said, here's the link to the debate. It's online. You can go listen to it. And half of them did, and they played clips from the debate in the newscast, in the news story.
Oh, that's funny.
Where he was going, I don't know. Let me say, 1 second, it's here in the book. Right.
Oh, I remembered that
so
the
that was the
person
fallout.
Destroyed this guy.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
That was the fallout from that. But that was fun. I mean, stuff like that, when stuff like that happens, it's funny. I like to laugh about stuff like that because it's ridiculous. But media does that. They warp the story. They change the story. They twist the facts to fit a narrative. And when they twist the facts to fit the narrative, what happens is the general public believe them. So whatever you see on television, whatever you hear on the radio, you believe. It becomes the truth. And
Well,
it
it's
doesn't
always
matter.
an amplification of what the facts are, and the facts might be true, might be, and I'm saying might.
Not
Remember what
always.
I'm saying,
Yeah.
but they amplify it to such a level that it's so hard for the average, like you and myself, to actually believe what is true, and you really have to decipher. So you have to do your own detective work by going into a form of broadcasting or print that we were brought up to know and respect years ago, for them to do the digging, but now we have to do the digging into media that we no longer trust anymore.
Yeah.
Like, look how it's evolved, and it's not. I really pity the people that are right now in mainstream corporate media, like really corporate media in the States, like all the big major U.S. networks and everything. I really pity a lot of these people, because whether or not you're Fox or whether or not you're CNN, whatever the case is, right wing, left wing, it shouldn't be any wing. It should be the facts, period. It's not, like you said, now media is now opinionated. Like it used to be, like radio talk show hosts are one thing. They're paid to make an opinion on something. News people should be strictly news, not opinionated.
Let me ask you this
Unless
question,
it's
Sheldon.
unless it's an editorialist.
Let me ask you this question. You were a producer on a major AM radio station for what?
Mm-hmm.
25 years, 30 years?
Yep.
Okay, so you were there for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
When these hosts get on and give their opinion on a topic, is it always their opinion on that topic that they're presenting?
No,
Are they told which side to get?
they are now. Maybe years ago they weren't. Like when I first started out, no.
But now?
No, it was their own opinion, and there would actually even be a disclaimer saying the opinions are those of those, and does not necessarily. Remember the old disclaimer?
Yeah, I had one before my show, every show for 16 years. I remember.
Not anymore. You won't. If you put on the mainstream media now, where I used to work, you will not hear that now.
Yeah,
You will not hear that.
for 16 years, right before my show, every episode, and sometimes before the first half of the segment, second segment, third segment,
Yeah.
every time I came back on the air, they played that disclaimer.
Yeah.
I remember the disclaimer.
Yeah.
Now,
It,
I heard it for 16 years, every night, right? So I remember it clearly. Now the question I have for you is, so they have a meeting with the program director or brand manager, whatever they call them now. The title
they
keeps
call it
changing.
brand manager.
Title
Brand
keeps
director.
changing. Yeah. And the brand director tells which person's going to take which side. They assign sides.
Pretty much, yeah. Because there's a lot of times, like, it depends on the weight of the host. But now, especially with the newer, younger hosts that are now going on, because now, if you notice, all the veteran hosts, in many cases, especially where I used to work, are no longer there.
Yeah, they're too expensive. I know.
They're too expensive, and the thing was, they had so much weight in their contracts and everything like that. They had a right to be in their opinion. But now, the newer hosts now won't see that. You will not see that anymore. They'll be.
So they're basically told what to say. Are they given talking
And
points?
it's not necessarily the brand managers that's telling them. It's the people over the brand manager in the
Right.
ivory towers that tell the brand manager when they meet with the announcers, this is the point of view I want the announcers to make.
Are the announcers given talking points?
Some yes, some no.
Okay.
Depends on the announcers. Some that are very, very, very well adequated and really are very, are very proficient. No, not really. And they'll get certain guide points, and then the rest they do it themselves. But a lot of times, I mean, look, they really ran it to a corporation to the point where I'll give you an example. Talk about being a corporation, and then you could deduce of exactly what I'm going to say. I would have a meeting as a producer, maybe one meeting a month, and many cases the meeting that I would have would be a special event meeting. Like if it was a Remembrance Day broadcast, if it was something very specific in a meeting like that, or it would be in the case of let's say the odd operators meeting, as we would call it. Okay.
Right.
Then, and I was working at one station. Now, fast forward much later on, I wasn't working at one station. I wasn't working at two stations. I was working at three stations. So now I went from one meeting to now I was working with three different hosts on CJD alone. So I was working with Tommy, I was working with Rick, and I was working with Rick and Suzanne. And Rick and Suzanne were two separate shows. Rick was from 12 to 1, Rick and Suzanne was 1 to 3, and Tommy was 9 to 12. That's three separate meetings for CJD alone. Fast forward, I was working for Mix, so I had a production meeting. I was working for Shom. I had a music meeting because I was doing reconciliation of music. I was helping out the music director and program director, and I was also doing a production meeting for Shom.
Right.
So I had, instead of one meeting maybe a month, I was having up to 10 meetings a week.
Wow. That's a lot of meetings.
Actually, no. Excuse me. No, it's even more than that, because I was having 3 meetings of CJD a day. Okay. Then I was having the odd time for Mix, the odd time for Shom. Shom, I had 2 meetings a week.
Now, at the meetings, I want to talk about CJD because at CJD, they're the talk station, and talk radio is what convinces people. I mean, music radio isn't really very influential when it comes to politics. Talk radio is.
No, exactly. Yeah.
So in the meetings for CJD, how did those meetings go? How did the programmers present the ideas and the opinions to the presenters so that the presenters understood that this is the way they had to go? They had no choice.
They would basically suggest. When I'm saying suggest, I'm putting it in quotation marks.
Yeah, of course. They were ordered.
Suggest a topic to the announcer. And the thing is, they would know that this announcer would take this particular stand. And it would, in many cases, make the announcer feel very uneasy. Because Tommy had a certain point of view, and if the station agreed with him, there was no problem. Tommy would be comfortable, or announcers would be comfortable. It's not just Tommy. It's announcers in general, because I don't want to just leave it for Tommy, in all due respect. But I'm saying that's how the radio stations started doing it. And now, if in fact they would suggest a topic from the upstairs that announcers would not agree with, they would really pressure the announcer in doing something they don't want to do. And the thing is, once you do that, and if the announcers are uncomfortable, it goes over the air. Like, as much as an announcer tries his or her very best to try to make it sound like it's their opinion, you could hear it. As a person that's a really astute listener, you could pick it up, and most listeners will pick it up, saying, that's not the way this announcer usually would focus. That's not the way the announcer would be comfortable with.
So why would programmers put their announcers in such positions? I mean, at this point here, you're putting your announcer in a position where he's going to lose credibility. He or she is going to lose credibility with their audience. Why would you do that?
An organization only cares about them, about their corporate bottom line. It's all about the owner. That's why, like, I remember the owners of the Montreal Gazette Post Media. I think it was Asper was his name.
He was the owner of CanWest Global. Yeah. Yeah,
or CanWest Global. Sorry, pardon me. So CanWest Global. He was very influential on the type of editing, and he was very, very tough on his editors and tough on his writers. And if it didn't reflect his point of view, they would not be able to publish the article.
Right.
They would not be able to express a viewpoint. So it's like, let's say you wanted to make a pro-Israel and pro-Palestinian demonstration, to put two sides to the story, which is what you're supposed to do, regardless of what your religious affiliation is. If both demonstrations are peaceful and both demonstrations, and you want to get the viewpoints out there, first of all, in any demonstration anyway, if you want to get your viewpoint, it's not done by violence. It's done by, that person, that side demonstrates, the other person demonstrates. You get both points of view of what their thinking processes are and all this other stuff. And you get both points of view, and you balance it into effective journalism.
That's the way it's supposed to be. Yeah.
And the thing is, you were forced by the publisher, by the editor,
I wasn't
whatever.
forced. I didn't do it, and they did it for me.
Yeah, they did it for you. So
Yeah.
that's the thing. So that in a way distinguishes your credibility. But the people that do know you will know that obviously that's not you. Like
Well,
the people that'll know the announcers that go on the microphones and know that this is not the particular side or point of view this announcer is doing, they know right away. The listeners are not stupid.
no.
And unfortunately, corporate media treats their consumers, may it be readers or may it be listeners or viewers, they insult their intelligence because they feel that they don't know any better.
Hey,
And
look,
they're only doing it on their bottom line because they're basically having an extension of their own political views. And I never agreed with that, no matter if you're left wing or right wing. I always believed that media has to be completely unbiased.
Hey, look,
I've always believed in it.
I was a prolific writer. I was really prolific writer when I was 14, 15, 16. I wrote columns after column after column. I wrote political columns. I wrote conspiracy theory columns. I did the whole gambit of stuff, right?
Yeah.
I had 4 or 5 different columns over the course of 20 years. Now, in those columns, my readership got to understand my perspective, because that's what column is, right? You're writing opinion. It's opinion pieces.
Right.
So they got to understand my perspective, my political perspective. When that article came out, I had just finished writing a column. I was writing columns for about a year before that, and that article came out. They were getting letters to the editor saying, "Hey, he didn't write that. Well, like what the heck? Who wrote that column? I mean, it had his name on it." But that really wasn't his writing. It wasn't his style. It wasn't the way he writes. It wasn't, it didn't reflect the way that we know him writing. So I assume that's what happens when people listen to a host every day, and then suddenly the host comes up with some kind of cockamamie, idea that doesn't reflect anything he's ever said before or will ever say again.
Well, it's like exactly. Announcer A is going to say that he's like, let's say, more of a right wing person. Announcer B is a left wing person. So could you imagine if the announcer A that was right wing all of a sudden takes a left wing format?
Yeah.
People are going to think that's not him. That's not. And these are people that usually listen. The demographics always listen to these particular shows day in and day out. And they're going to know exactly after, even if it's the first few times they listen, they'll get to know the announcer. They'll get to know the mannerisms of him or her. They get to know the style. They get to know exactly where they stand on different viewpoints on all grand scheme of things. And then all of a sudden, as they're getting used to it, the announcer varies, and they're going to realize, you know what? They know right away it's not the announcer that's doing it. So people are not stupid, and people, the consumers, which are the listeners, the viewers, as well as the readers, they get very well acquainted of the announcers and the personalities that write and go in front of a microphone, in front of a camera. So they know right away. They're not stupid. And the problem is media has to stop insulting, and the owners have to stop insulting the intelligence of the listeners. Those are the people, too, that go to the advertisers and buy the products.
Yeah.
And and that's the thing. It's even in political debates I always said that no matter what, and I always said, like many times on your show as a guest host, as a contributor on your show, I always said one thing: for people to go out and cast their vote. I never said who to vote for, and I will never say who to vote for. Because everybody's vote is who they vote for is their business. It's not for me to tell you vote conservative, vote liberal, vote NDP. That's not my issue. That's not in my business. My business is, though, to tell people, if you're going to complain, if you don't like a particular party, government leader, whatever, and you didn't vote, then stop. Then don't complain, because you haven't done anything. Haven't done anything.
It's logical, Sheldon. That's logical.
Yeah. So all I'm saying to people, like when it comes to any election, municipal, school board, provincial, federal election, and I vote for all the elections. If I'm not in tune of what's going on, I do my research. I listen. I said, what is close to my point of view? And then I'll say, okay, candidate A. Okay. So I go out, I cast my ballot. I go out and vote. I do, and many countries don't offer that type of democracy, the democratic freedom to go and vote.
It's true.
People have died by it. People have fought for our right to vote. And when you start getting low turnouts, and then people get frustrated in the government. Well, what do you think is going to happen? And could you imagine if a government or leader or party lost by one vote and you didn't go to vote? Like, how do you think you're going to feel then?
Statistical odds of that happening
I know,
zero,
but you know what I'm
Sheldon.
saying. But you know what I'm saying. You know, statistical odds, yes, you're right, 100%. But I'm saying, could you imagine if that ever came down to it? You
Right.
never know. It may never happen, or it might happen. But even that. So that's what I'm saying. Like the U.S. is going to go through a very big election.
Yeah, it's coming
Whether
up.
or not you like Trump or you don't like Trump, what I would say to the American voter is go out and vote. That's all I'm saying. If you're able to, I don't know if they'll be able to do it online. I don't know what's going to be with COVID. I don't know what's going to happen. But the way it's going right now, I don't know how this is going to all turn out in the end. But I'm saying if you're able to vote online, cast your ballot. Go out, and if you don't like Trump, vote against him. If you like Trump, vote for him.
Yeah, whatever.
So all I'm saying is for people to go out and vote. It's not for me to say don't vote for Trump or vote for Trump. I'm saying go out and just vote. That's what I'm.
Sheldon, if you were going out to vote this November, would you vote for Trump?
I would go out and vote.
You're avoiding the question. I like you skirting around the
Well,
question.
I don't tell people who I vote for. I mean, that's my own. That's my own.
But
own.
you're not
right.
American, Sheldon.
But
So you're not voting.
But the thing is, I am. I'll promise you this. If I was an American citizen, you're darn tootin' I'd be out on the polls or vote online or wherever to be able to cast my ballot.
But would you
First
vote for
of all,
Trump?
I'm not an American.
Would you vote for Trump if you were American?
I would look into what his policies are at the time of the election.
It's okay to say no, Sheldon.
Well, right now, if I was going to go into the election now, I would say no.
Okay.
But at the same time, you know what? Let me preface that by saying the Democrats are not exactly helping themselves either.
Would you vote for Joe Biden?
I'm not crazy about Joe Biden. I'll be totally honest with you either. I am not crazy about Joe Biden.
He's kind of two-faced.
So, I am really not crazy about Joe Biden. He's not blowing me away. Trump, and the thing is, again, Trump's not blowing me away. So I don't know. I even think too, like the American politicians are almost like a joke in many cases. Look, we had presidents that were former actors.
Yeah.
We had governors that was a wrestler that never governed in his life. We had a California governor that was an actor.
You have a president. You have a prime minister of Canada who's a drama teacher.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, what is it? If this is the best that we could do for our politicians, then I think the whole political overhaul really remains to be seen.
I think it's time.
Look,
Trump didn't come out of a vacuum. Trump came out of a movement where people were just tired of the politicians, tired of the BS, tired of being lied to, tired of the promises that were never kept. Trump was a protest vote. He was a protest vote. He got in as a protest vote. That's fine.
That's
fine.
How
that happens.
He's going to do in the next election
Now,
is anybody's guess.
Now, unfortunately, fortunately, it's fortunate and unfortunate all at the same time. The American political system is set up so that the average Joe could become president, theoretically speaking.
And you got the Electoral College.
Yeah, today you need $1 billion to do this, but at one point, the average Joe was able to run for president.
Yep.
You didn't have to be a billionaire to run for president.
Nope.
So the system was set up for the people, by the people, so that people could be ruled by the people. And the people are me, you, and everybody else, right?
Yep.
Now, Trump is truly testing that theory that the country could be run by the people. Because, he wasn't a politician. He came out of nowhere, and he became president. And that's fine. I have no issue with Trump being president. What I have an issue with, though, and this is where my major issue lies, I support the presidency of the United States. I don't necessarily support the president. I support the presidency, the office of the United States president. And the attempted destruction of that office by the Democrats over the last 3.5 years, or 3 and 3/4 years, has really been scary, because you destroyed a presidency, you destroyed a country. So it's really been scary how they've tried to destroy the office of the president. This president here, look, presidents come and go. They've had good presidents, bad presidents. I mean, it happens.
Of course. Yep.
So that's why they're only there for 4 years. After 4 years, you can vote them out, right? So if it's a bad president, after 4 years, you could dump him. If the country doesn't like him, dump him. But the concerted effort to destroy the office of the presidency over the last 3.5 years, orchestrated by the Democratic Party of America, has really, really turned me against him, period. I've really been turned against him because it's been so anti-democratic. It's been so anti-republic. It's been so anti-American that it's just hard for me to swallow. Now, they have forced me to become a Trump supporter. I wasn't a Trump supporter. I've never been a Trump supporter. I was a supporter of the presidency, I've always respected the presidency of the United States. When Obama was in there, I didn't like him as a president. I spoke against his policies, but I always supported the idea that he was president. I never argued that he shouldn't be president. I may not like his ideas, so you fight about policy. But you don't fight about the validity of the presidency and the validity of the Electoral College and the validity of the Constitution. You know, these are arguments you should not be having, because these arguments promote the destruction of the Republic of the United States of America.
Okay.
So he was elected. He was elected according to the rules of the game. He followed the rules or didn't follow, whatever it was. He was elected according to the rules. Everyone knew the rules before the election. At the end of the election, he won according to the rules. He's president. You don't like him as...
Yeah, one thing, when he was elected, in my personal opinion, he was elected fair and square in the democratic process.
Yeah.
For 4 years. Whether or not you like him or you don't like him, he was elected pure and simple. Will he be elected next election?
Who knows?
Again, it will be up to the democratic process of people, the American people, going to the polls and casting their ballots.
But Sheldon, the day after he was elected, not even the day after, a few hours after he was inaugurated, the Washington Post already ran an article saying the impeachment process has begun. They were talking about impeachment.
Well, again,
the day he was signed in as president.
Yeah. So, well, that's the thing. Again, media is not being fair, and that's why I said whether or not it would be Obama or Trump or anybody else in the media, they should be subject to the same scrutiny, the same questions, the same everything. There should not be partiality of any political party, any political leader from the media. Everybody has to be treated fair and square.
Okay, so just before we go, Sheldon, let's just recap. We both agree that Nick Cannon should not have a national platform anymore after what he said this week.
Absolutely, yep.
I don't believe in cancel culture, but I believe that when people express hatred, they should be removed.
100%.
We both agree that when a president is elected, no matter how unpopular he is, he's still president until he's unelected.
Absolutely. That's the democratic process.
And we both agree that anyone who doesn't like the president shouldn't be supporting organizations claiming to wanted to overthrow the president, like Black Lives Matter. They should be voting in the next election to get rid of the president.
That's what the cast of the voters are. That's where you stands in numbers. That's the most powerful tool. It's the same thing as you tune off a radio station, a television station, a podcast. You have the tools to your fingertips. Use them.
So, Sheldon, we agree on more than we disagree today.
Well, this is not the first time, and it won't be the last time. I go by the facts. I go by all sides and everything like that, and everybody should be treated equal. And if a person gets voted in, whether or not I like him or I don't like him, you like him or you don't like him, the person gets voted in the proper democratic process, fair and square, then the person is president, whether you like him or you don't like him. It's President Trump. I even if I hate the guy or I love the guy, he's president of the United States of America. It's in the books.
Yep.
Is he going to get elected next election?
We'll see in November. Yeah.
Well, no, we'll see in November. And it's, the process is the process. I'm never going to argue against the process.
And that's what really bothered me, is that the argument against the process, the argument trying to usurp the democracy of the United States of America, that bothered me a lot. And And people were calling me, "You're a Trump supporter," as if it's some kind of insult. And I was like,
I'm also wondering if that's going to affect if that's going to create a lower turnout again to the polls, which I hope it doesn't. I hope one thing I do always hope when it comes to the polls, whether or not you're a person voting in Canada for a Canadian election or a person voting south of the border into the United States election, I really hope that there's going to be a lot of people going out to vote, because it's time for people. We have the democratic process. Use it. Use it. If you're angry against the government, use it to the polls.
People don't vote because they feel
It's apathy.
disillusioned.
Yeah.
They feel disillusioned. They feel disenfranchised from the process, and that's really where the problem lies. That's why people don't go out to vote. The voting record is so low because people don't feel that their votes matter, that their votes count. They don't feel that way.
Yeah.
Look.
And I say, instead of Black Lives Matter, all lives matter. All languages matter. Everybody matters.
I agree 100%.
It's not just black, whites. It's look how many.
Look, I empathize with the black community and the struggles that they have. I empathize with the Jewish community, the struggles they have, and the Pakistani community, the struggles they have, and the Sri Lankan community, the struggles they have, and all the minority communities, because we're all fighting the same struggles here in Quebec. Especially here in Quebec. We're all fighting the same struggles. The Muslim community, we're all fighting the same struggles. And I empathize with all of them.
Linguistic problems, even linguistic rights here.
Yeah, we're all fighting oppression, right? We have an oppressive government in Quebec, and we've had oppressive governments for years. And we're all fighting the oppression in Quebec, whether it be minorities, any minority in Quebec. So I empathize with all minorities.
Me too.
The overemphasis of Black Lives Matters is media hype. It will disappear after the election if Trump loses. This whole thing will just disappear because it's all just a ploy to get Trump out of office. If Trump wins, this will continue, and will continue until they could find a way to get Trump out of office.
Well, he could only be a president for 2 terms.
Yeah.
So after that, it doesn't make a difference. He's going to be out anyway.
If Trump wins, we might be in for another 4 years of this garbage.
Yeah. Well, who knows?
Yeah. Sheldon, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
My pleasure.
I do appreciate it. I want to thank everybody who is watching and listening. I appreciate that too. And I will be back on Tuesday. On Tuesday, I will be back here on the Howie Silbiger Show. And then on Tuesday at midnight, going into Wednesday, Political Hitman on Israel News Talk Radio. That is always a fun show, so feel free to tune into that.
As Howie puts on the Blues Brothers sunglasses.
I should put on the Blues Brothers sunglasses.
That's so funny.
That picture, I don't even know where they got that picture from. It's hilarious.
I love it. I think it's great. I love it.
I don't know where it came from.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a few pictures. There's a few pictures of me floating around the internet that I have no clue where they came from.
I can see Howie, a political hitman. I'm a soul man.
That's what I am. I'm a soul man.
Have a good night, Howie. All the best.
You don't want to hear me singing. Definitely not. Definitely not. All right. I'm Howie Silbiger. He's Sheldon Freed. Thank you so much, Sheldon. I'm Howie Silbiger. He's Sheldon Freed. This is the Howie Silbiger Show right here on the True Talk Radio Network. I will see you again on Tuesday. Take care. Stay tuned for the rest of the programming here on TrueTalkRadio.com.